All right, we're going to go over the vocabulary assignment. You're probably asking yourself, do I wear anything other than overalls? And the answer is no. Okay, so let's get to vocabulary. First and foremost, please do not define the terms. Do not define the terms because I already know the definition. I want you to show me that you understand the terms by using examples. Okay, you can use examples from the videos that we have. You can use friends' videos that we've had, lectures. You could use a book. You could use lecture notes. Anything to show me your understanding of the terms. When we talk about examples, again, I would really like it that you be very specific. And I'm going to call you out on that. I'm going to be like, I need specifics. I can't give you credit unless I can see that you understand how the term works. So if you were to use argument and you were to say, an argument is a stance on an issue based on reasons. Well, if you used that as your answer, that is incorrect because that is the definition of argument. What I really want is an example of an argument. So an example would be, the argument that Kate made on the issue of whether or not to feed your dog Alpo is that she felt that you should feed your dog Alpo based on the research that she has done. So the answer there showed me, one, that I understood argument, which was a stance that Kate was taking on an issue, which was whether or not to feed her dog Alpo based on reasons. That was the research that she had done. So that shows me everything I need to know, and that's the goal that I want you to strive for, is to give as very specific examples as you can to show me your understanding of the terms. So another example would be when we talk about issue. Make sure if you are talking about issue, you give me an example of an issue using the words whether or not. Recall what an issue is, whether or not we should do something. Okay, and in conclusion, please be mindful about conclusion. It is not the ending of a paper or an essay. It is a conclusion that you come to based on reasons. Okay, all right, let's see here. When we talk about morals and ethics, remember the difference between morals and ethics. Morals are our personal feelings about things. Ethics are what is done within a business or a hospital or at a police station, everything that you would consider ethical within a business of some sort. And again, I say business, but you know what I mean. Outside of your own personal morals, it's ways in which if you were to go to, a hospital, again, ethically, you do not give certain information out. That's the ethics within the hospital. Okay, so you might have had jobs where maybe you worked at Lowe's or retail or something, and it is unethical to steal. Not just illegal, but they consider that ethically incorrect for the position. Okay. You get the hint. I'm trying to say here. Okay. So I just want you to make sure the difference between morals and ethics when you give your examples here. All right. Prima facie values. So with prima facie values, I want to make sure that you don't just say, Jacob had prima facie values. I need you to give me something specific. What was the prima facie value that Jacob displayed? So you could say Jacob showed that he had prima facie values by giving up his seat on the bus for, the older lady who looked like she needed to sit. Ta-da! Right, I'm being very specific there. When we talk about the role exchange test, please make sure that you give examples of what that might look like. So you could say, I put my decision to the, okay, how do I say this? It's hard to come up with these on the whim. You would say, when applying the role exchange test of whether or not I should cheat on my boyfriend or girlfriend, I found that I would not like to be cheated on because I put myself in their shoes. Therefore, I chose not to cheat on my boyfriend or girlfriend. Recall that you're showing me how the role exchange test works, where you put yourself in someone else's shoes. Now think about the higher principles test. The higher principles test is you would apply the highest principle you have to the situation to decide whether or not what you should do is right or wrong. So in a higher principles test, as an example, you can say, I applied the higher principles test to when my roommate didn't do their dishes, and while I was upset, I wanted to follow my highest principle, which is integrity. And so I decided to do my dishes, but then talk to my roommate after. So notice the very specific examples I'm looking for. So again, you can use the videos that we use, the friends videos. You can use lecture notes, book, whatever you want to help you do this. You can use some of my examples, and you can move them around a little bit, be a little bit creative. You can change names, you can change, some of the experiences, just to kind of show me your understanding. Okay. Again, claims, warrants, make sure you're very specific about that. If you do make a claim, show me what that claim is. I claim that Goldilocks should be arrested. Why should she be arrested? Because she broke and entered into my home. Okay. And the warrant, remember, the warrant is the glue. The warrant is what makes the reason and the claim go together. So a warrant in this case is that it is illegal to break into someone's house and steal their stuff. That's the warrant. Don't use warrant as often students will use it and say, oh, the police had a warrant for their arrest. That's not how I want you to use the term. I want you to explain why it is warranted that somebody was arrested. So it was warranted that Goldilocks was arrested for breaking and entering into my house because breaking into and entering into someone's house is illegal. The because and then da-da-da-da, that's the warrant. It's that piece that holds it all together. So keep that in mind when you were giving a warrant example, okay? It happens every time students will, there's a warrant for their arrest. I'm like, no, the warrant is because doing such and such is illegal. Okay, that's what you're trying to explain there. When you do rationalizations, remember, there are 9 of them. I want you to use one of the 9 rationalizations and give an example. So you can use a Friends episode where you use one of the 9 rationalizations and explain their behaviors, just like you did in the KCA. So again, when I see rationalizations, I'm looking for one of the 9. Otherwise, I'm going to give you a 0. Hope you watch the video, or else you're going to be upset about this. All right. And then when we talk about the syllogisms and deductive reasoning, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. When you talk about deductive reasoning, your instinct's probably going to be deductive reasoning is a valid format, or an argument in a valid format. That's the definition. So it's a little bit hard when we talk about deductive reasoning, but you can explain deductive reasoning by giving examples of it, as in deductive reasoning uses syllogisms such as the classic syllogism of, and you use all men are mortal, Socrates was a man, therefore Socrates was mortal. So you can see how you would use that. Okay, so that is how you could use for deductive reasoning. Now for syllogism, my suggestion would be, for syllogism, pull up one of the examples of the categorical syllogisms, like modus ponens or tollens, So pick one of those and say, an example of a syllogism would be modus tollens, or we'll say modus ponens. If A, then B, A, therefore B. There you go. That's a good example of a syllogism, because you're giving me an example of what a syllogism looks like. Here's a hint. When you give an example of a syllogism, you could talk about modus ponens, but I would suggest actually creating your own syllogism using modus ponens or tollens or chain argument, however you want to use it. Use one of those and create your own syllogism, so that when you go to do minor premise and the major premise, you can use those as examples. And you could say, oh, the major premise in the following syllogism is blah, blah. And then you could say the minor premise in the same syllogism is blah, blah. So see how you're showing me? Because I need you to show me, like on that sheet of paper where you've got the different syllogisms. Right? So I need you to show me what the minor and the major is within that syllogism, so that I understand it. And if I see the full syllogism, I'll know which ones apply. Okay? All right, and then the antonyme, you can create your own if you'd like, or you can use any of the examples that we've used in class. I would love to see you try something creative based on what we already have. Again, you can move a few things around based on what I've already said. You can use examples, again, from the book, from the lecture, whatever works for you. So, and stereotyping, be mindful of stereotyping. When you use it, give an example of what stereotyping is, rather than just saying, oh, he was stereotyping someone. Well, what was the stereotyping? What was the behavior? So, all right. Anyway, that's it. Try to make it as quick, short, and simple as I can. Please make sure to bold your vocabulary as best as possible. I also have a lot of other quote-unquote correct examples for you that should help you out. But for now, this is what we've got. Please take a look at that and message me if you have questions.